Welcome to the 2017 Oklahoma Bigfoot Symposium video series that was hosted by the MABRC. A great time was had by all that attended. The MABRC invited all to attend one of the research areas to experience the life of a researcher. All the speakers gave an excellent presentation, starting with Henry Edge, Carrie Martin, and Debbie Jones from the all-female research group Sisters of the Moon. Robert Swain, director of the Arkansas Primate Evidence Society, better known as APES, spoke on the breakdown of statistics with citing reports from Arkansas and his soon-to-be-released book. Noted cryptozoology author and filmmaker Lyle Blackburn spoke on the history of the folk Arkansas and sightings from the past to the present. Jim Whitehead of the MABRC State Director for Oklahoma gave an excellent presentation on the history of primates titled Planet of the Apes. Mark Sawdust Newbill, the MABRC State Director for Tennessee and founder of Beast, gave an in-depth look at the research being done at Land Between the Lakes. Bernie Wall talked about what we look for in the woods, and Randy Savage, the MABRC State Director for Missouri, broke down some captured audio from the Memorial Expedition. We hope you enjoy this video series and hope to see you at the next 2018 Symposium.
So when Mark showed up yesterday, I told him I had a surprise for him. He got a promotion to be the Tennessee State Director, so we're all proud of him. He puts in a lot of time in the field. So let's give him a big hand up. I met Mark probably, about 3 years ago? And he's been with us ever since. He's been in some real hairy places with us. And he's one of them researchers that you always want to have watching your back. So without further ado, I want to have Mark come up here and let him get started.
Good googly goo. Darren was giving that introduction and I thought, who is he talking about? And I thought to myself, this guy, he must have been in documentaries. He must have been in some of them Bigfoot shows. He's probably wrote books. He's probably one of them Bigfoot experts. The truth is, there are no Bigfoot experts. I'm Mark Newbill. I live in West Tennessee, and I don't really call it researching, I call it searching. And I've been doing that for almost 4 years now. I started off by seeing a thing on the internet talking about the Arkansas Bigfoot Conference. I contacted Robert Swain and found out about it. While there, I met Darren from the MABRC and signed up for that. I really got my feet wet going out on MABRC expeditions. Me and a friend of mine went to that. She said, you ought to get on Facebook and see if there's any Bigfoot groups that are in Tennessee. And I got on there and I found this one Bigfoot group, and they were having an outing at LBL. And at LBL, that's where I met Bear from the Outlaws.
What's LBL?
Land Between the Lakes. Has anybody heard of Land Between the Lakes? I've got a pretty good eye of where I want my campsite at. So if something's going to come in to a campground where this creature may come in at. So I set up my tent. When he pulled up with the Outlaws, he walked over to me and said, well, you're either stupid or you're really smart. And we've been friends ever since. Then I started this group called Beast, which is Bigfoot Evidence Analyst Sawdust Team. What we do is we want to help people that want to contribute to the Bigfoot community. We need all kind of help. Our main thing is setting out audio recorders, and we need to train people to analyze these recorders. These are the four main groups that I am in. And DW asked for me to talk about land between the lakes. It's in Tennessee and in Kentucky. Here is a map of it right here. You can kind of see the location of where it's at. It's the largest inland peninsula in the United States. It's over 170,000 acres of woodlands, open fields, and wetlands. There's over 300 miles of undeveloped shoreline at LBL. There's 450 miles of roads, which most are gravel or dirt roads, but there are about 150 miles of paved roads. There's 21 campgrounds in there with over 1,400 campsites, and you can also do primitive camping in there anywhere that you want to. This area has been occupied from pioneers from long ago, and there's over 220 cemeteries that are in there. And you can hike a mile back and come across an old homestead where families were living, come across these old cemeteries. There's over 352 species of land animals at LBL. There is a pretty cool elk and bison range there that you can go through and drive through. Anybody heard of the beast of LBL? Raise your hands. Now, this is what they call the dog man, or I call them man dogs. We're not going to talk about them. I'm here to talk about Bigfoot. I have spent many hours at LBL and have not found any evidence of man dogs at LBL. But all you have to do is Google the beast of LBL and it'll just be site after site after site. I work in our area, the beast team works close with the outlaws. And this is pretty much my motto that I have wrote. Mutual respect with the willingness to share and help each other brings us the rewards of accomplishments that individually we could not achieve alone. And that's not only a good way to look at researching, but that's a good way to look at life. I'm going to talk about some of the people that we work with there, and this is Mike McSwain, and he has lived in that area his whole life, and he was so helpful with us, showing us the roads, the back roads, and how to get around in there. Shelley Reed and Larry Porch, they were my first researchers with us. We're pretty much a team. When one goes out, at least all three of us. And this is Larry. Larry, raise your hand. Higher, Larry.
He's the one to blame.
Some of y'all might have heard of Dan Rickey and Vicki Fulcher. They did a lot of research in western Oklahoma, and then they moved back to around Martin, Tennessee. They have all kind of knowledge. Dan was a crop dusting pilot for over 40 years. The things that we have learned from them is just invaluable. Andrew Meisinger, you either love him or hate him. But he kind of looks like Dimebag Darrell there, but he was an archaeologist for 15 years. Went back to school and now he's a scientist. So he's smarter than what he looks. He helps us immensely with audio, with filtering some of the clips that we capture. He helps us financially. He has bought us a satellite trail cam. So if anything walks in front of this camera, then it sends us a picture within like 20 or 30 seconds. This is Jennifer Sawyer. She has recently come on board. She has really been helpful for me. She's been helping us with our videos. And Deborah Ferroni, she is someone that I started training. She got in contact with me and wanted to learn how to do audio review, and the things that she captures on the review is just amazing, and we really appreciate these ladies. Tim Kumbo Baker, he has helped us so much working LBL. He has spent so much time at LBL. There's times that we're riding around and we're trying to find a certain road that he has told us about and can't find it, and cell phone reception is not that good. All we got to do is get up on top of a ridge and call him. He always puts us right at the spot. I'm sure a lot of y'all know that horse thief, but that's Bear from the Outlaws. Bear and I have spent a lot of time at LBL and other places, and he is very helpful with our research there. The very first time I set out a recorder ever in my life, I set one out at LBL, and Randy Savick, which is over here, helped me immensely with learning what kind of recorders to buy, where to set them out, and how to review them. These two howls here are from the very first time that I set out a recorder. One of the things that we do for the people in here that are interested in researching and want to know where to get started, we have some standard operating procedures that we pretty much use before we even think about going out in the field. The first thing is preparation and a game plan. You have to know the area, and you want to, you just don't want to go in there cold. Expeditions, that's where you can get your knowledge and experience to know what you want to do. Find mentors. Groups like the MABRC is an excellent group to be with so that you can attend expeditions. That's how I got started, because there's no way that I would be at the level that I am now if it wasn't for the MABRC. Here we see David Counts asking Tim Baker a question, and it's so good to be able to talk face to face with someone that's got years of experience. The next thing on doing your homework is search the databases. There's the BFRO is an excellent database to be able to search to find out about sightings. If you're in a certain county and you want to find out what sighting reports are out there, it's if you go on vacation, let's say you're going over to another state and you think, I'll let them go to the amusement park and I'll hit this national forest. It's a good place to go to check that county. to find out the sightings. The next thing is my forte, and that is maps, maps, maps. Here we see in a historical map of Fort Sill, Oklahoma. These maps are excellent for looking at. One of the first things that I look for are the names. If you see something that says like Devil's Ridge or Panther Screams, things like that, kind of gives you an idea of what might have been going on back in there. Topographical maps. This is one that Larry and Shelley and myself worked, and we called it Titanium Swamp. And you can see where we mark off areas that we covered, we put out recorders, but looking at a topographical map, that will, just by studying that map, will show you where the possible corridors are. The next thing, once we go out into the field, our standard operational procedures is we're going to drive that perimeter of that area. And we're just not going to go flying down, picking up rocks. We're going to go slow, and we're going to drive the area. We're looking for game and tall boy trails. If we see like a little dirt road like this, then we're going to stop and we're going to get out and we're going to walk up it, looking for signs on the side of the road. This X is one that we found by walking up one of those little gravel roads. What we have found in our area is it means possible warning or detour. Kind of how we came about that conclusion is we had set up a primitive camp down in a holler. One of our fellow outlaws, Eric Tipton, ran across this X, and it was right above our camp. And it was just like it was saying, don't go no further or you're liable, when you walk over the hill, you're going to walk right into their camp. We're looking for possible markers. We find all kinds of these markers at LBL. We're looking for springs and creeks that lead to the watersheds. We're looking for moving water, natural shelter and concealment, possible blinds. What are the food sources? Is it abundant in wildlife? What are the native plants and trees that grow in there? Are there nut and fruit trees? Are there berry bushes in there? When is there harvest time on this? Because we want to put ourselves, when the persimmons are ready to be eaten, we want to put our recorders and put ourselves in those areas. Old homesteads. We come across these old homesteads. We may hike 2 miles into the interior of LBL, come up on an old homestead like this. There are several things that we want to look for. One thing to be cautious about is the old cisterns or the old wells, because it could have just been a piece of plywood or a piece of wood put over them. Leaf litter gets over them and you don't see them, so you really need a walking stick whenever you're walking, so that you can make sure that you're not going to step on a piece of plywood and find yourself at the bottom of a cistern. You want to locate where the old smokehouse was. These pioneers and people, they did not have the option of jumping in their air conditioner cars and being able to drive to Walmart to buy some chops. They had to harvest their own meat and they had to preserve it, and they used salt in these smokehouses to do it. Well, over the years, that salt will drain down into the soil, and you will find animals like hogs and deer and critters that we're looking for that are coming in there to get their mineral supplements. We enjoy camping. That's why we're out there. We enjoy camping with old friends and new friends. I've known Henry a long time, but to be able to meet the rest of the sisters has really been a privilege for Larry and I this weekend, and be able to spend time and compare notes. That, to me, that's just invaluable. That's what I enjoy more than anything out here. So we look at it as a camping with a plus. Tracking.
Is that your dog, Larry?
That's mine. That's a standard poodle. I thought I knew a little bit about tracking until I met Larry. And I found out I didn't know squatch about tracking. And Larry thought he knew a little bit about tracking.
Yes.
Until we met Kay Michael and Eric Tipton. Now these guys work areas up in Ohio. Last year, I believe they hiked 2,500 miles. And so they really put in the time. By working with guys like this, you can really pick up things. Larry and I took them to an area where we have a primitive camp set up at LBL. Once we got about halfway in, it's like 2 miles into the interior. Next thing we knew, Kane and Eric got separated. So I went with one and Larry went with the other. And they were basically working that area, and they actually worked themselves back to our primitive camp. And so it made Larry and I feel good that we were doing the right things, because they chose the same paths that we chose. Daniel and Valerie. I'd like to talk about something that they found from tracking. They came to a meet and greet that we had at LBL. And I believe it was before they got there, the night before, we heard the coyotes start up. But it was different than just the alpha male starting up and the rest of the pack coming in. But it was like they were being chased. You could tell their voices that they were distressed and that they were running. Where they were at was on a ridge across the bay from where we were camped at. Daniel and Valerie hiked up that ridge and found this old logging road. Well, it seems like at LBL, whenever an area is getting a lot of activity, the government will come in there and throw a chain up, and they don't want you in there. Well, they found this logging road right across where it looked straight down on where the campsite was. This is what they found. They found this coyote. Now, if you'll look at its front legs, according to the back legs, this coyote was twisted like a dish rag and just left laying there. That night, we were hearing activity up on that ridge, and when we came back the next day, it was nothing but bones left. It was like something just left it there, and then they came back at night when all this activity was going on below them, and just like you would sit around and drink a Coke and eat some popcorn and watch the show. I want to show you something that me and Larry and Shelley did, and this comes off one of my YouTube videos. I got some cards over here from that's over there on Big Jim's table. This was very suspicious to us, and I just felt like this video could tell the story better than what I could up here.
Okay.
everybody. We're going to talk a little bit about our camp out recently on the weekend of May the 12th, 13th, and 14th at Land Between the Lakes. We went back to where we had some activity, where Kumbo had camped, and we got that camping spot and set up there for a few nights to see if we could get anything to happen to us there. But in the meantime, whenever we weren't setting in camp, we did go around and do some calls. And during this weekend, the Thursday night we were there, it rained most of the night, but the Friday and Saturday night we were there, the weather was perfect. There wasn't any wind. It's a full moon that would rise up probably about 11 to 12 o'clock to where you could see across fields and stuff. But the first location we went to, whenever we stopped, we got out, it was just unbelievable how beautiful it was with all the fireflies dancing in the fields and stuff. I couldn't even number how many were there, but I would say 10,000 were just flickering in this field. But as we scanned the field with the FLIR, we could see deer scattered out feeding in this field. And Mark turned to me and said, let me have that FLIR. I want to video the deer as you make a booger call and see what their reaction is. So I let loose with the call, and the deer took off and bunched up and went to the opposite end of the field from us, but they would not go into the woods for any reason at all. And about the time they got to the other end of the field, we could hear a response come to my calls, and at first it was faint, where I couldn't really tell what it was, and I turned to Mark and said, is that a coyote? But it was one solo return vocal, and he's like, no, I don't think so. I think it may be a howler of a booger or something. We kept sitting there and it kept getting closer, and as it got closer, you could definitely tell that it was not a coyote. It was a possible booger vocal that we were getting back, and it continued to call and continued to get closer.
It just really seemed peculiar to me that everywhere we went that weekend, we would start recording with the FLIR, the deer. Whenever we would do a booger call, the deer would refuse to go out into the woods. Some of the deer would even move out towards the middle of the field. It was almost like they didn't want to get tricked and pushed off in the woods and get bushwhacked.
I totally agree with that. It was almost like they were huddled up. I bet they were standing side to side whenever they bunched up like that and didn't move at all. They stayed alert the whole time and stayed in that tight group.
Well, we're going to go ahead and play the audio for you and let you see the spectrogram on it. As you will see, the animal frequency does not match up with any type of canine or any other known animal. The animal signature is what we look for when we are looking for purported Bigfoot vocalizations.
That's getting closer. That's a booger. Are those deer gone? Oh, they're way down at the other end of the field. One of them is. Be sure to check our bags. Two of them is. Don't forget about our bags. I already forgot it.
About a month ago, some of us from the Outlaws went on the 2017 Bigfoot Outlaws Booker Tour. And we had a great time, and I would like to share a little bit of that with y'all. Jade Boswell, which is Dale Boswell's daughter, went with us. He was actually the entertainment. He's a country western singer. We was glad to have him there to help us through it. In McDonald's place in Lexington, Oklahoma. And if you're ever in that area, you need to stop in there and support Glenn. He does a lot for the MABRC. He has a wonderful bookstore. A lot of these guys here, like Big Jim and Darren, they have gone there and had talks there with people coming in. And it's just really good to see a business that will support us like this. Then we went to the Four Corners area in New Mexico, where Brenda Harris has her conference. After the conference, there was where people could get up and tell things and experiences and stuff that they had. It was just a good time. The next night, Brenda took us out to where she's had several pretty spooky encounters. It was about an hour and 10 minutes away from her home, and it was just amazing driving, because she would say, well, this family over here, they called me to come out to do an investigation. And by the time she'd get through at that story, she'll say, well, this happened over here. Whatever happens on the res that has anything to do with Bigfoot, this is the lady that they call. We went up on top of this mountaintop, and we just we stayed up there that night. The fella on the far side is Randy Yazzie, and I really enjoyed talking to him. He carried us to where he lives, to where he has activity. I actually got to see where something with huge fingerprints had dug into his siding of his house, to where something was trying to get in there. And when you hear people talk about booger lights, he had the booger lights, and that's just basically street lights, because he had that place lit up like a Christmas tree, so that if anything stepped in there, it'd be like daylight in there. But that's what he had to do to protect himself and his family. But we picked up something up on the FLIR that night.
And you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? Ever was, and look where my hand was. Time isn't holding up, time isn't after us. Same as it ever was, same as it ever was, same as it ever was.
Don't find yourself going spastic like David Byrne of the Talking Heads. Ask what you can do to help.
Researchers, we need help with things. We need analysts that are willing to be trained, whether mostly for like audio. If you have clerical skills, if you was a secretary all your life and you're retired and you're interested in stuff like this, every time we go out, poor Shelley has to record all this stuff and keep up with it. But we want to record the ambient temperatures, the barometer, what moon phase it was. We have a lot of data that we keep up with. You might have knowledge, you might have experiences. You might have been a hunter or a fisherman. There's things about the woods that you can help teach people like me that are willing to learn. Donations, just like this event here, by y'all coming out to this symposium, that helps us year round. You have no idea how much it helps with our research. And just look at what talents that you have and how you might be able to apply those talents if you're wanting to contribute to the Bigfoot community. And this is myself and Larry and Shelley and our Beast group. And I appreciate y'all coming out and putting up with me. Like I said, I've got some business cards over there on the table and would appreciate you watching our YouTube videos of us going out. And if anybody has any questions, now would be the time.
On keeping up with all your data and everything, have you found any type of pattern?
Well, that's what we look for. We do see some patterns out there.
Do you share any of that moonlight and the barometer? Does any of that have much effect? Or?
We seem to do better when it's a new moon. Weather like this right here, where it's just starting to get cool in the evenings, it seems to make them a little bit more friskier.
Howls and stuff are friskier as you see them? Or?
Well, you hear them a lot more, and we have better luck at calling them in.
Is that a technical term, friskier? Pretty sure that ain't me.
I've always wondered about like ticks and chiggers and stuff out there. We're covered in them right now just from getting out of the woods. They got to be covered completely up with them, aren't they? Would you think that? Or?
We won't know until we catch one, I guess. God has provided different animals with plants to eat. I mean, we don't understand a lot of these plants and things that are out there, but these animals do. If they go to get sick, they know what to eat out there to help make them better. We have a friend named Cheryl Corntassel that's an outlaw, and he's down in Georgia. I am just so envious of him because when we're walking through the woods, he can sit there. We walked by some grasses one day, and he goes, "That's what they used to make mud on." Just knows all of his tree species and all of his plants. If you know things like that, that's one way to help contribute to the Bigfoot community. Because once you start putting all these pieces together, then you start having more luck at finding signs. All right, well, I thank y'all for y'all's attention.